as I kind of noted at the top of this event here, these sectors do not exist in vacuums. There is such intricate collaboration and intricate nexus between the agricultural and natural northland sections. So when we think about bringing these things together, we really want to have the opportunity for all the stakeholders in the room to be part of both of the agriculture and natural working lands panels. So with that being said, it is my pleasure to invite up to the stage for the agricultural panel. We have Sherri Brennan. We have, Justine Campbell. We have Stephanie Seuss. Anna Mariscal. And last but not least, who am I missing here? Amanda Watson. So we have a great representation of panelists up here. We have people who work in all portions of this very, very important sector. And we have some ways that we want to talk about the agricultural sector today and really think about how we can change, how we can be the catalyst for change and really improving the agricultural sector throughout the Sierra region. So, with that being said, I will lead with a more general question. So, we've talked a lot about collaboration today. And I think, especially in a rural region like ours, collaboration is so, so important. The partnerships that make up our social networks are really how we get the work done. So, my first question for the panel is, what partnerships, whether they be land trusts, RCDs, workforce boards, have really helped to advance the work in your field? And I'm going to throw it to Amanda.
Well, I'll start with one of the pieces, and I guess these are more internal partnerships, but our network of RCDs here in our region have been a super valuable partnership. And so we have the Amador, Calaveras, Tuolumne in this area. We also really work with some of our other wider Central Sierra group of RCDs. And those RCDs coming together, and we're working on trying to develop what is our strategy towards really staffing our RCDs, coming up with plans and projects that actually will serve our communities. So I'll start with actually trying to let you all know that there is likely in most of your areas an RCD, and that we are working in the agricultural and forestry fields. And so reaching out to them as we're all open, we thrive on our community partnerships.
I am Anna Mariscal. I am also I'm a coordinator supporting Amador, Calaveras, and Tuolumne's RCDs and the Alpine Watershed group work together, as well as helping build out wider RCD coordination throughout the Central Sierra region. I'm going to keep my comment brief, which is that really for the RCDs, at least this smaller AACT group, is that the RCD is here to support our producers with navigating resources. The term that has been used is technical assistance, but we really don't really see that as, we see ourselves as more as navigators and wanting to work with producers to help connect the dots and let you know what resources are available to you, and helping to connect producers to expertise. So I'll pass that on.
Partners. I'm Stephanie Seuss. I'm the Community and Resources Development Director for the Chicken Ranch Rancheria of Miwok Indians of California. Thank you, first of all, on behalf of the tribe for all coming out to this facility. Our partnership, and you're going to hear a little bit more about it during the lunch hour, is spread across state, federal, and local entities. We're just starting our farm, which Justine will speak to, but we take an approach, before we really jump into something, we pilot a lot of projects. And when we pilot things, they're typically done under grants, and again, we go to the state and the feds to take a look at these. So some of our lead partners, Greater Valley Conservation Corps, California Strategic Growth Council, Cal Recycle, Cal EPA, California Climate Action Corps, California Alliance for Community Composting, EPA, USDA, Thrives Tuolumne County, Foothills Horizon Outdoor Schools, Little Peeps, which is our daycare facility, Tuolumne River Trust, which is now Yosemite Rivers Alliance. And it may not all be focused on ag, but we pull what we can from all these entities. And having that network, having the ability, if we don't have the answer, if we don't know where to go, we have created a broad range of agencies that we can rely on.
Hi, I'm Justine with Chicken Ranch Rancheria Tribal Farm, and as you can see, that can be a job position in itself to try to have all that connection and partnership in the community. As far as connectionship and partnership as a farmer, I am leaning out and reaching out to other farmers in our area, and I'm trying to bridge connection with them as not as competitors, but how can we help each other out? So taking my farm crew to their farm to help them with redoing cat tunnels or working on a weedy area, and then them bringing their farm crew to my farm to help and have this exchange system between us instead of having this competition and looking at each other of how are you combating this issue with this pest, or how are you dealing with this soil issue. So taking the time out of our very busy seasons to make sure that we're building friendship and partnership with our local farmers.
So Sherri Brennan, and the primary hat that I wear today is cattle rancher, proud cattle rancher, and Grammy. But the hat that I'm going to be really talking from is my retired supervisor's hat. And when I was on the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors, elected in 2012, 2013 we had the rim fire. We were one of 3 families that had devastating cattle losses out there. And I promptly had to take that hat off and put on the community hat, because my time became completely focused on community safety. We had communities around our county that were threatened. We had schools that were closed for weeks. We had people that couldn't go out and literally breathe. We saw records shattered with the fire being the second largest, I think, at the time. Now it doesn't even rank in the top 15. We broke records with high severity burn zones. And so my experience with partnerships was, it really started back down there and learning how to leverage partners across a very wide spectrum. And then that has continued really in looking at how we embrace all the tools that we have available to us to help with this fire threat. And so the project that I'll really be talking about today is a partnership between Tuolumne County, the U.S. Forest Service, UC, a research project, and how we look at some of the new advances in targeted grazing and opportunity around reducing some of those fine fuels that are a really prevalent piece of this whole catastrophic wildfire regime.
You just hold it down there. We'll do like a snake draft order. Backwards. Well, it's just some great perspectives, and I think the reason I asked that question is because there are so many partners and stakeholders in this room, and just having the opportunity to network and liaise with folks and just find where those potential blind spots are. Like, where could we provide an extra partnership here that would really leverage it and really catalyze growth in a certain place? So really important thing, so thank you for that. I want to talk a little bit about workforce development as it pertains to the agricultural industry, because that's a big reason why we're here today. There is a stark statistic in the agricultural industry that the average age of the farm worker in the state of California is over 60 years old. So thinking about the future of our workforce, how do we get young people engaged in agriculture? How do we bring the next generation of farm workers to the industry?
So how do we build opportunity? And that's a really complicated question. And so I'm going to take just a step back from that really briefly and say that's a state statistic. I think we have an opportunity in our rural counties when we look at, and again, I'll speak from my own experience and a few of the folks that introduced themselves around the room, where some of our generational folks have been leaving, and we actually see them coming back. because we want to find an opportunity. They want to come home and have the experience for their children where they were raised. And so while that doesn't fit in nearly enough circumstances, I think we've got to find a way, at least in our industry, to build capacity for folks that want to, and so that's grazing capacity in the livestock industry, so that folks that either want to come home and be part of it or want to start have an opportunity to start, because we're not growing more land.
This is a great question, and I come from Missouri. I went to Missouri State for Sustainable Agriculture and Plant Science, and I've been in this field for 12 plus years. It may not look like it, but you know, there was a lot of young people when I was going to ag school, and a lot of them were from their family's farms, and then there were some that weren't from their family farms. And I just have to share this one story, is that all these kids are from their family farms trying to learn how to do practices that were going to better their family farm. And we had big ag, Monsanto, and people coming in and recruiting them to go off and work for their industry. So we're competing with big corporations to take those kids and say, hey, let's pull you back into the family agriculture sector, and how can we make this happen for you? Because, like you're saying, it's very hard to get, when I was coming out of college, for them to see a future at their parents' farm, also to see a future with their parents, to listen to the way that they wanted to farm, right? Their parents saying, this is how we've done it for 50 years, and we're going to keep doing it this way. And they're saying, Pop, this is not what my school's teaching me. We need to change our techniques into a more regenerative agriculture way. I'm not doing that. Well, then I'm leaving. And so this open-mindedness of, okay, we have these younger kids that want to come in, they need access to land. So I was working on a project in Missouri where we're connecting legacy farmers to young kids that want to farm, and maybe their kids didn't want to take it over anymore. So these generational farmers were opening up their lands to college kids that they didn't know, in hopes that they would just keep it in the ag world. So trying to figure out how we can get young farmers connected to the large amount of land out here that people may want to keep in the ag sector instead of going to being built for housing or something. You know, I was discussing with them how I live next to a woman who has 600 acres, you know, and she may be transitioning soon. Where do those 600 acres go to, right? Like, how do we have neighbors, make sure that it stays in the farming world, and we can connect farmers who want to farm with those acreage. And then youth, bringing them into a mindset that this is of a valued career. You know, that food is medicine, that what they're doing is providing for generations to come, and that there is a value in proving to them that they will get paid, that they will get health insurance, that they will get a livable wage. Because as a farmer myself for 10 plus years, I have been paid a wage that is not suitable to take care of my family. So how do we change this mindset in our community that we value this, that we can pay $8 for a latte, then we can pay $8 for a carton of eggs that were grown locally. So we have to do this mind shift change, and it starts with our youth, it starts in the schools, and it's up to us to enforce that in policy. So, thank you.
Hard to beat that. That's why she's such an amazing person to have on your team. So for the last 3 years, the tribe has been working with Bay Area Community Resources, which is also part of the old AmeriCorps program. And we've been bringing up fellows. We've had as many as 4. We have 3 this year. Shout out to the fellows over there in the corner. And they're either, some of them have been undergrads, some of them are graduate students, some of them have had no college experience at all. But we pull them in, and when they come to work for us in our department, they have a wide variety of things they do, including working on the farm, which you have to have a passion for. You have to have an understanding, you have to want to be there. You're working a lot. In the summer, we start at 6 in the morning because of the heat. In the wintertime, we kind of slow down. But we've been able to pull from that. So far, in those 3 years, we've pulled 3 employees in to work for us full-time. It's a good starting point. When you're working in Indian country, no 2 days are the same. And having that opportunity to get them out there in the field to see what this is about, food sovereignty, having the farm, having our composting program, is huge. And then they take that back to where either their group meetings, into their personal lives, and you feel like you've created a spark somewhere down the line. And I think that's, for us, has been the best way. We also have a little Peeps daycare facility on site, and we take our team over there, and we have little gardens over there. And so we've got the 2-year-olds, the 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, with their hands in the dirt, learning where their food comes from. And again, once you do that, I think that grabs you. It creates something that you want to see, sustain. That's not the word I'm supposed to use, but that's helped us tremendously.
We just hosted the AACT, National Working Lands Hub, that's what this collaborative is called, has developed a rangeland health series. It's called the Rancher to Rancher Rangeland Health Series, and we just hosted the first one 2 weekends ago. And it was a day focused on gathering ranchers together to talk about systems management. And we had a rancher host the field day and specifically talk about what their challenges are, how they would like to see their land management be amplified and foster the health of that landscape, and really looking at it from a systems management approach as opposed to a practice adoption approach. And moving away from this thought of inputs, but what could they do within their management of their grazing. And what really struck me was we had 9 ranchers attend that field day, and a number of them came from multi-generational families. What really, really struck me was that not one of those families are, there was a great deal of diversity in terms of how the next generation is being brought into stewarding the landscape, all the way from an individual who at 12 years old, his dad was asking him, what do you think about this? And I'm thinking of trying this, and what are your thoughts, and how do you feel about that being implemented on the landscape and us moving the animals this way? And then all the way to individuals who were in their 30s and closer to 40s, and they're being handed over a landscape but not really having been involved in the decision making and operational management of it and the business management of it, and just trying to figure out how do they steward these landscapes in a way that are viable and that will support the health of that landscape. And to me, what really struck me was this. I was just listening to an individual talk about, in ag systems, there's the economic responsibility, there's the environmental responsibility, and then there's also the social responsibility. And we tend to get really focused on the economic responsibility, and then we're beginning to focus on the ecosystem responsibility, but that social responsibility of how we are, as Justine and Stephanie are saying, and Sherri are saying, is like, how are we fostering that in the next generation? And how are we creating those opportunities for mentorship and knowledge sharing and bringing people into that decision making, but also, coming at it from another perspective of land accessibility and the changing of how these landscapes are changing, what their value is, what the value of them are seen by in terms of development, and not so much as working lands. And I'm just speaking to this as someone who has managed sheep in the past. My husband and I have, and we would like to get back into it. And we are currently trying to figure out how to access land in this area, and really struggling to figure out how to do that with people and who can we talk to, and how can we, it's going to require a capital investment from us, and we need to know what type of land we are going to be on in order for us to understand what type of sheep and the quantities that would be viable for those pieces of properties. But equally, how do we show that we are competent and responsible lessees without having sheep and established business that people feel that they can trust to go into a lease with us on, right? And so I think it's really complicated, and I think it's very complicated when you add in the fact that lands are being subdivided into smaller parcels that make them less viable as a working land, especially when you're factoring in trucking costs and the cost of having to move through these landscapes and smaller parcels when you're talking about a grazing lease operation is just not financially viable. And then you add on all the other economic things of housing and food and everything like that, and it's complicated.
So I'm going to speak to the Resource Conservation District perspective on this, and I think one of the pieces is, from our perspective right now, we're working on what is our role in figuring the workforce development piece out. In the past, Resource Conservation Districts have been really focused on, we're entirely grant funded in this region. We're a special district, but entirely grant funded. So a lot of our programs have to be defined by what's allowable or valued at the state level. And so a lot of that's been focused on TA. But really what we're really trying to focus now on is figuring out what the community needs, desires to make agricultural viable in this community. Because without that viability of being able to actually run a business, we're not going to be able to keep people in this sector. And that trickles down to the environmental scientists that are needed, all those pieces. If we're not managing our lands, we're not going to be utilizing, our contractors to do mastication, all of that. So making sure that there's the community that values agriculture, and that that agriculture is a viable business opportunity, that we're supporting it back and forth, right? That is, I think, the core issue of workforce development in our rural Central Sierra region. And so I think we can talk, and we need to talk about the opportunities now of how we're getting people excited about being on the land and working on the land. And I will agree, I think, with what I heard is I believe there are people that want to work on the land, they want to do these jobs, but they need to be able to survive and thrive doing that. And so I think that that's a huge component of the puzzle. It's not the only piece, but that's really what the Amador RCD and our partners, I think, are trying to figure out. What is our role in kind of getting to that, framing that as a region, and then how do we elevate that to the state and federal levels so that we can really collectively talk about what are the issues and challenges and opportunities here in our rural counties.
Keep it. Such great perspectives. I mean, it's just so interesting to hear the variety of perspectives, talking about changing the narrative and reimagining our relationship to food, and then we have the perspectives from the RCDs talking about workforce development and commercial viability, financial solvency within this industry. It's all just very, very interesting. And really, these panels deserve an hour. I'm sorry, you guys only get half an hour because we could go and go. So, but you teed me up really well. So we have about 7 minutes left, so let's try to do a lightning round so that we have opportunity for question and answer. How does policy at the state and federal level affect your capacity and your ability to be impactful within the communities?
I'm going to speak really broadly on this, and I think from our perspective, one of our big pushes from the RCD is how are we elevating the realities on the ground to affect how programs are established at the state level. Like I said, we're grant funded. The priorities that come down from the legislator get brought into those programs, and a lot of times the realities of those do not match up on the ground, and they don't actually serve the producers. So that's
First, I wanted to say that there is, right now, CDFA has their Climate Smart Agriculture Strategy out for public comment, and it is so critical that communities provide public comment on these documents. That document has, in their summary of agriculture and the land, it does not really speak to these mountainous foothill communities, especially for the livestock industry. It's pretty limited, and they have it as a working lands document, but it also they don't talk about timber. So I just think it's such an important opportunity for these local communities, especially these more, what I would say are more marginalized communities that aren't considered as like prime agricultural production lands, to be providing your feedback and sharing your lived experience in these documents. And I would also say this is that, that the state also has a climate smart natural and working land strategy with nature-based solution targets. For our region, they hosted one listening session, and many people that I know in this work didn't know that listening session occurred. And I just wanted to say that strategy is coming back out for review in January 2026, and I would really just really support and want to encourage you all to look out for that and provide your feedback, because those strategies are integrated. It's coming down from the California Natural Resources Agency, and it is being integrated into CDFA, Department of Conservation, Wildlife Conservation Board. The funding that is going to be made available to your communities, that strategy speaks to it. So such an important opportunity for you all to engage with that. And my last piece about that is that I'd like to add is, from at least the state level, what I've seen in the work that we do, they're very interested in practice adoption. And I just had the opportunity to talk to an individual at CDFA yesterday that is a tool for managing these landscapes, but it would be fantastic if they start shifting to thinking it as one of the tools and actually looking at it more holistically in terms of what's the opportunity for systems management.
Okay, so as a sovereign nation, the tribe goes under federal guidance, not necessarily state. We created an ag plan back in 2016, 2017, coming out of the drought. And in that plan, it focused on what our agricultural opportunities were for property we have across the street. It's about 600 acres that's getting ready to go into trust. The key to that plan for us is water. And we've been working on negotiating water rights and water agreements since 2014 here. We've been dealing with the Bureau of Reclamation since 2017. Every 4 years, when an administration changes on the federal level or on a local level, and sometimes on a state level, I feel like I have to start over from square one. Whether something's a water of the U.S., whether something is pre-1914 water, whether it's curtailments, whether it's CBP, whether it's state water project. For us, that is the most difficult policy challenge we have. There's a lot of funding out there for climate action, a lot of buzzwords, but when those administrations go out, you get new buzzwords. And that impacts our ability to move and function. Tribes, in my experience, they don't move. These are their homelands. They're going to care for their lands. They're going to look 7 generations down. But when we come up every time, okay, the government's back open, so I can start my communication, right, with the feds again. But this is the hardest one. And if you're going to be in the ag space, you got to have water. And out here, we've got fractured rock. We were under number 2 in the state for failing wells during the drought. That's not sustainable for this tribe. So we pursue. I get more gray hair every day, and I have to see my hairdresser a lot more often than I used to. I was going to say. But that's where the policy really hits for us.
Thank you. Policy and what I do is market farming, vegetable farming, and how I see it is there for safety. I have to follow rules for my vegetables to make sure that no one gets sick, and I appreciate those policies. So I won't speak much on that. but my heart and love is for the soil and for composting. And composting policies that recently happened in our area were very hurtful for community composters who was trying to start here. And it started with an exemption that this forever exemption that's going to happen now because we're rural, and that saying that because we're rural, we don't have to compost here when the rest of the state has to compost. And that really hurts us community composters because we need incentives to get businesses and people on board to want to compost. Plus, if you're thinking about a solution for climate change and what's happening in the world, composting is one of the top ones to do for future generations to come. Something that's tangible at home to get your kids involved in growing food or involved in a mindfulness of a lifestyle change. You start with composting. You start with putting your food scraps in a little bin. Now, currently, there's no one here to pick that up. And there's no incentive for them to do it because this region is exempt now. So I would love to see the rural area involved more in composting, and I know there's a representative here that you could speak to about community composting. That's his specific job. And we're going to speak to about in our presentation about our closed loop system and composting and how important it is. But in the world of soil building and ag and regeneration, it starts with composting. It starts with the mindfulness of taking that banana peel, putting it into the bin, and putting it back into the soils, and teaching our children to start there. We all need to be supporting anything that supports composting.
In 60 seconds, okay. So I appreciated Stephanie's comments, and I would say that if you're in agriculture, pick the agency, and we can go through a list of challenges. And so I really want to talk about opportunity at the moment, because I think that when we look at all of our counties, Tuolumne County is 75% public lands. I know there are counties in here that probably push the 90% threshold. And so again, with this conversation around fire and some fuels management, the agencies are looking at ruminant grazing capacity differently, and it is actually providing some opportunity. I don't have to smile because I opened by saying I had my Grammy hat on, and then we were talking about listening to the next generation. And I have that next generation with me. And it was a little bit of when they came and said, Mom, we think we need to try this. We think we need to figure out how we can use some technology to help us with controlling some of this grazing, getting them on the slopes, and helping us to manage the key areas that we have on federal lands where we have some pretty stringent requirements. How do we work around building some of the capacity post-fire? Again, I said we are in that rimfire landscape, and the brush has come back ferociously. How do we create opportunity for the next generation? And so I will say, if we don't get to it here, please, I'd love to talk to you, because I think both the BLM and the Forest Service are starting to look at how they do this differently. I know the agency has been tasked with filling vacant allotments. I don't think we have any vacant allotments on the Stanislaus, but I know there are vacant allotments on the Sierra and the Sequoia. I think there are a couple on the El Dorado. And so again, there's going to be some opportunity out there for some folks that want to be creative, maybe want to embrace some of the new technologies that are available, and work with partners out there, because I'm not going to say that there are some learning curves with those technologies. There are, but there's an opportunity there, especially for the next generation. If we can master some of those learning curves, there's some real opportunities there.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, we've run out of time for questions, but I would encourage you to find any one of these wonderful panelists and come speak with them at lunch or after the event and kind of get those questions answered, because we have such a variety of great perspectives on this panel. And Sherri was talking about land and the public use of land, and here in Tuolumne County it being about 75% public land. I believe in Inyo County, I believe it's 97% LADWP or U.S. Forest Service. So
Alpine County is 96%.
Alpine County is 96%. So these are the challenges that lay in front of us. A big round of applause for our panel.